lectures about the workshop and lectures about the origin of species by Darwin. But you may ask a question, all of you. A priest talking about evolution. Is that realistic? Let me introduce myself to you. I worked as a cancer researcher in the field of genetics for more than 21 years. I have published 106 papers so far. These papers coming, still they are writing because of my work that I did. So I know the topic inside out because I experienced a lot. In my last 7 years as a researcher, I work on a single cell. And that's why my strong belief became even stronger than before. Because of a single cell. What a single cell can do is beyond any kind of random one. You can't say it's random. Because they are so meticulously, they are so, small details makes a big difference in a single cell. So I'm blessed to work in cancer research where we work in evolution a lot, evolution of the cancer. But let me speak first. So the topic is the origin of species, but what I wanted to speak today as an introduction before Fadi and then Dr. Farid speak, I want to talk about the origin of evolution. What happened, or what the scientists did to reach what we are at the moment, understand of evolution. So, like I said, I'm a creationist Coptic Orthodox priest. And by the way, if you look to all the images here, this is my belief. But I will try my best to be non-biased. I will give you the exact picture of what is evolution, what is macroevolution. And at the end, if there is time, I will be speaking why I am not macroevolutionist, but I believe in microevolution, not macroevolution. And like I said, as much as I can, I will be non-biased. So what is evolution? Most of you understand what is evolution. What's your name?
Mark.
Mark? Okay. Because you're smiling a lot, so I say
No,
you're enthusiastic.
I like the English.
So, what is evolution? This is a definition by Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. It's a general meaning of evolution. It is the contemporary meaning in biology is referring to the chain of properties of biological type in population over time. So, two things, or three things. Change, biological, and over time. This is the concept in general of evolution. So, let's explain from where did they reach this concept of evolution. We'll be speaking from the 19th century and before, and then we'll be speaking from the 20th century and beyond. So the 19th century. Just before Christ, 600 years before Christ, a Greek philosopher speaking about, the species. And he said the first animal lived in water. And during a wet phase of earth, but spent part of their life in the land. As you can see here, it was just a fight between the two fishes. One left this fish for her and went out. That's what possibly it is, he thought about it this way. But anyhow, the first human must have been a child of a different type. Most probably a fish. So this is a Greek philosopher, Meletus, and an examiner Meletus. That's his view on how human was evolved. Another Greek philosopher, Plato, he believed that there is a divine designer and that each natural type of object in observed world is imperfect manifestation of the ideal form or species which defined that time. So it means God created something, but it's now being in the wrong form. It's not the right form. The divine desired that all things should be as like himself, which is, some may say, oh, but this is what we believe also. Okay, the divine created us in his own image. So he must have got it somewhere from a Jewish background. Aristotle, he started the first hierarchical ladder, the ladder of life. He classified, this is from his original, I couldn't find a better image for his original piece. Okay, from figure 18, that's one of his initial thoughts about ladder of life. So the same principle of what we said evolution is over time. So he said, oh, if it is over time, that means there is a progression over time. Organisms placed according to their complexity and structure. So the main, they start here and it goes all up to man. So it starts from lower and it stems all the way to the top. Other thing, we move now after Christ, so in the 17th century, the 1600s. The record says that there are different species and the accumulation of species. So this is from a website saying this is how the earth is formed. So it goes from the Paleozoic to Mesozoic to and going up all the way to human. So the record says this, that microbial appeared at 350,000 or 3.5 billion years ago. So that's the first microbial. The Earth, according to science, is what? 4.3 or 4.8? Around this. So it took time, according to them, to reach to the first stage. And then the last to appear in the fossil record is modern human. But as we're going to see later on, this is not accurate because there is a lot of appearance of complete rather than a tree going from less complex to more complex, from more simple to complex. So let's talk about the 19th century era, where most of this concept of evolution started to evolve. So the first one, Lacrae, he said life on Earth was 75,000 years old, and that man had descended from apes. So this is not Darwin. This is Lacrae. This is the idea of the Lacrae from the beginning. Remember, the tree is the idea of Aristotle. Next comes the father of Darwin, Erasmus Darwin. He said the Earth was million years old, leading to evolution of species. But when he presented this idea to the scientific community, he got really hammered. And he was afraid to say. And that's play a part of his son, Charles, when he wanted to present his idea, because he thought that he would be ridiculed by many people, saying that he's just following his dad's ideas. So one part of that play in Darwin's delaying his discovery or his reports. Thomas Malthus, is the one who did a lot of mathematics. He's a mathematician, and he argued that people and animals overproduce and put a drain on the resource. And he has the idea is that because Earth is not an abundant and there's no limit, he said by time there will be a production of animals that overpopulate, and therefore there should be exclusion, because there will be competition. So there will be speciation competition, and there is inter is outside, intra is in. So there will be an inter-speciation competition, and there will be intra after that. There will be intra. So let's say, if I put now a piece of meat here, and we haven't ate for God knows long time, 57 days, no meat. Everyone will say, oh, I will have one. But if I put only 10 and we were 20, what will happen? Some will be disadvantaged, and therefore they won't eat the meat. And if there is no food after that, people will be starving and die. So that's the idea which gave Darwin of natural selection and the survival of the fitter. Whoever has the legs to run to get what he wants, or the peak, or whatever structure he has, he will go and get it first. And then comes Charles Lyell. He says, evolution had been influenced by gradually change since the beginning of time, in the shape of terrestrial service that could not be perceived by the human eye, setting the foundation for Darwin. So again, Darwin learned from previous people and postulated in one theory. The last one, Carl here, he says, he was the first to name human as Homo sapiens and place human in the same family as the primates. He believed that in mutability, but he did not believe that the creation of a new species was possible. In other terms, which we learn about it now, he believed in microevolution, but he could not believe in macroevolution. I will explain what is microevolution very quickly, because I will speak out. Evolution is the changes that acquired by a certain pressure, environmental pressure or whatever, okay, for the person to adapt. As part of adaptation, part of things that allow us, for example, to have, why always African wins the long distance? Because it's an adaptation. Go for long miles for their schools. They have been, their muscles has been, exercise. They put a lot of exercise in order to complete the race. So this is become a build in their genome, okay, with a stronger muscle. They have a high stamina. Not all, but still the majority of them. Plus, it's environmental. Or if there is a need for a certain shape of a peak, because the food cannot be taken, with any peak, it has to be a specific peak, then a kind of micro evolution happen in order to shape the peak, as we will learn later on. So the first thing we want to speak now about someone who came before Darwin is called Lamarck. Lamarck, John Baptiste Lamarck, came in the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century, between 1744 to 1829. Lamarck proposed, he's a zoologist, philosophy of zoology, in his report, a theory of inherited of acquired character. He doesn't believe on shared common ancestor, so he doesn't believe on macro evolution again. He believes that there are some inheritance things that happen within the species in order for it to adapt. He believed in simple life were created and continuously by spontaneous generation, it become more adapt to the environment. And he, for example, the horse here, it was short leg, then because of the grass and because of the soil that they grow on, started to have a muscle in their leg, and then they become more and more, the bone become longer, and they reach to become the horse what we see now. It's just an adaptation for the environment in order for the species to adapt, to survive. He postulated his theory on this. He says, no new needs, change in the environment need acquisition of a new change in habits and behavior. So when an environment change, the animal has to adapt and change to survive. He says, it needed acquisition of a new character or organ. He says, use and disuse of organ may lead to either strengthen the organ to perform better, and the example of the horse to run faster in a very strong solid, is dried solid, rather than the one before it was muddy, and that's why they develop the longer bones and stronger muscle. And it says the acquisition happened because, like I said, the effect of environment. The third part of his postulation is this inheritance of acquired character is needed. He says a newborn unfit to face the change environment condition, and the changes of their survival are increased. As I said, it doesn't believe that a mutation or a trait, at that time they didn't know what's mutation, they call it a trait or a change, does not need it or is not needed unless it makes you fitter to survive. And if an animal have acquired this change, will pass it on to generation, not through mutation, but through something he didn't know. Speciation, he said, new species is formed from accumulation of a new character that transmit and acquire across many generations. What is his evidence? He says the giraffe was short like a goat, but because there was a lot of grass at that era. But as trees and shrubs started to appear in the area, it pushed the giraffe to pull the head.
No, it's just because you're stepping on the cable.
So the giraffe, because of it needed either to push her neck up or to go like this to get on the top of the shrub. And eventually, throughout generation, changes happened that allow the giraffe to have a longer neck and longer leg. So it can reach the top of the tree. Not shrubs now, but trees. Snakes also develop by losing the limbs of the snakes because it didn't need to have the limbs. It was an easy prey, and therefore it lose the legs and allow the snake to go faster. Okay, so that's why no legs. That's his postulation. And the same with the aquatic birds, that they did not, because they need to go on the water. The part between the hand, as you know, when we were born, when we are first babies, there is a kind of link between our hand, like the duck. But we have now different limbs. There is no link between them. The duck needed that, so therefore it did not de-use it. But because they need it, they kept it in their development. Again, like the ostrich, doesn't need to fly because it started to be big and it's very hard to have a big wings. So they didn't use the wings and therefore it's disused, and hence it's become a kind of no flying, flightless birds. And as we say, where it went wrong, where Lamarck went wrong. And this is well documented across many scientific papers. It says one of them is usage of organs and sometimes impair rather than strengthen the organ or muscle or spine. If you, like me, becoming old, I used to carry a lot of good things when I was in Sudan. I used to carry a lot of bottles for waters when there is no water sometimes. When I lived in Port Sudan, during rain season, the rain comes from the hills, destroy all our pipes, and we don't have water unless we go to the reservoir, which happened to be about 15-minute walk from my house. So the easiest thing, I go, 2 big jerrycans, 25, 30 liters, carry the 2, bring them, go back, bring 5 or 6 journey per day in order to have water for 1 month, 2 months every day. Now I'm getting older and I have problem with the sciatica because I have maybe injured my spine, and that's why 12 years ago suggested. So I have a problem now of using my back, okay, wrongly. I was doing this rather than going with my knees. I was young, I feel strong. But using a lot of the organ can make the organ not function properly. So he was saying, if you use it a lot, it can actually make you better. The organ will be better and you can use it. But they say this is one of the things that it can be all the time right. And in his word, there is no inheritance to acquired characteristics. So for example, if one of those parents become blind before producing an offspring, their offspring will not be blind. Okay. Which is true, their offspring will not be blind, but if, for example, I work, like I said before, in cancer, if you and your mother and your dad are carriers of the gene BRCA1, which is well known in breast cancer and ovarian, pancreatic, all of the cancers, BRCA1 or BRCA2, if most of them are carriers, you're most likely to have, the gene that causes cancer. And that's why some families runs in the families, and you will have a very young, 30 years old woman that have a very aggressive type of cancer. And that's what he said. He doesn't need to acquire characteristics, no inheritance. Another thing, he says, that according to the theory of continuity of cells, plasma, in 1892, this theory stated that the environment factor do affect only the somatic cell and not the germ cell. This is also wrong now, because it can affect both. When a mouse tail was cut, no tailless offspring was born, even after 80 generation. And this is to answer the giraffe thing. Longer, because they inherit longer without any genetics, but they inherit because there's a need. They did this test, and there is no tailless mouse. Believe me, I've seen some people try it before. Okay. What's the new thing? It's called New Lamarckism. This is after all. How many minutes I have? Okay. New Lamarckism is always when there is a theory that went wrong, the next wave of people defending that theory, they will change a little bit in order to make it more acceptable to people. So in New Lamarckism, it actually came in the 90s with more power back, because Darwin was taking on everything, but the New Lamarckists came when they discover epigenetics, because there is no DNA involved. So they came with this idea of a gene, or they've been discovered, the gene can change and be manipulated, not by mutation, direct mutation on the DNA, but there is something called epigenetics, which I'm not going to bore you to death about how it's actually done, but it is not involving change in the base of the DNA. It puts something called a methyl group that activate or deactivate a gene. So it controls if the gene is switched on or switched off without any genetic code involvement, any change in the DNA. And they went ballistic. Oh, this is the New Lamarckism. But let's see what's the difference. In the original theory given by Lamarck, here the modification they did, the theory, they stress on the internal vital forces. Here the New Lamarck does not give any importance to these factors. All what he says about disuse and disuse of organs, they say it's not a factor at all. It's something to do within the human body for the stress and to do with kind of possibly epigenetics. The theory stress on the direct effect of change in environment of the organ or organism. Only these modifications are transferred to next generation, which influence germ cells or wherever. So it's not, first he said it's only somatic, now they say no. It's germ cells, somatic, whatever. It doesn't matter. Trying to make it away. Now let's go to the meat. Welcome to Mr. Darwin. Darwinism. Darwin, he was a very intelligent boy of Erasmus Darwin. His dad was also interested in fossils and animals. He wanted his boy Charles to go to medical degree. He couldn't continue. He moved to the theology school. He couldn't. And then he sent him into a voyage, going to South America at the Galapagos Island, which is next to Ecuador. So he has to travel from Plymouth all the way around Cape Town, all the way back towards Galapagos Island. And when he reached there, he saw a lot of species, new species, And he done his observations throughout the voyage that lasted about 5 years. So it's between 1831 to 1836. So Darwin, as many people call him the father of evolution, he was influenced by many scientists, as I said before. His Erasmus Darwin, his granddad, sorry, not his dad, his granddad, Charles Lyell, Robert Grant, Thomas Malthus, and many others, whom he used to postulate and put together all their ideas in one. What he did from 1836, when he came back, to 1850, he was hesitant. He started to study his evidence of the birds in Galapagos Island and all the species that he collected, and tried to make something out of it. What is happening? Why all of these changes of different peaks and these changes? So he started to look around and try to write his paper. But like I said, he was worried. He didn't want to have the same fate as his granddad, Erasmus Darwin. But in 1850, he received an abstract from a friend of him called Alfred Russel Wallace, who collected also a lot of fossil and a lot of exotic species from different regions across the world, mainly in Southeast Asia, as far as I remember, if I'm correct. And he reached the conclusion very similar to what Darwin reached. That put Darwin under pressure. I must publish. As scientist, my boss always said to me, if you discover something and write it in your notebooks, it is in your notebooks. No one knows about it. But if you discover something and publish a paper, then it's well known. If anything comes out of it good, it is your work. So in science, if you find something, even the small, you have to immediately publish it. Otherwise, you'll be scooped. I was scooped 3-4 times with big papers. But thank God, we managed to publish it. So worrying, so he got so worried, and when he sent him, Darwin did not want to see Wallace receiving all the credit, as I said. So Darwin and Wallace wrote paper side by side and sent it to this society, which I cannot pronounce the name. I will leave you to pronounce the name. Darwin published his book of the origin of species in the 24th of November 1851, which he spoke a lot about his finding in the Galapagos Island. And then he went further in 1871, which is about 12 years later. He published the Descent of Man, which he said that man could have arisen from apes. Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. So what are the main principle of Darwin? First of all, he is the geometric overpopulation, which, remember what Malthus says, is about the competition for space and food. If the man grew up and overpopulate, and then another species also overpopulate, there will be shortage of food. And therefore, one of them, the survivor of the fitter, will survive. And this is what is called the crisis point. This is the food resource in red, and the population is going exponentially, as you can see here. it will reach a state which is called the crisis point, where it will be struggle between interspecies versus intraspecies competition. Once the interspecies is gone and become a one species that control the area, there will be another crisis. Because if they overproduced, okay, then there will be another crisis because there is not enough food. And therefore, he said there could be another mutation for becoming more fitter, and therefore it can lead to a struggle. This species, it says they can divide 3 times a day. And if it's left for 5 years growing, it can cover the size of the Earth 10,000 times. 10,000 times the entire world space. If it's left without control, without this kind of struggle or crisis point. So the first one, we say geometric population and the arithmetic food and spaces as we suggest, and the struggle of existence. So this is the first 3 which we talked about here. The crisis point, the struggle of existence, the competition, the survival of the fitter, the geometric overpopulation, and therefore the limit and the space, the limit of food and space. Then it comes to his finding, the Darwinian finch, which is the whole story of evolution came from. He realized that when he goes around the Galapagos Island, he found that the shape of the peaks are differ from one species to another. I forgot to ask Maha to give me something, but it's fine, I can demonstrate. So example, if I bring cornflakes and Cheerios, and I gave you a stick that we use for the barbecue, okay, and I give another one, okay, something with like a spoon. So which one will be fitter to survive? The spoon or the one with the stick? Huh? The spoon, because it take everything, it take the 2 together. Okay? But if only I have Cheerios left, the Cheerios circle, okay? And I didn't give any, so I give every one of you just a stick. And I put Cheerios and cornflakes. Who will win? Who will be, in terms of food, who will be consumed more? The Cheerios, because it's easy, I can go with the inside and try to just knitting it to get it more. There will be a lot of the cornflakes which no one eats. There's no point. So what will happen, according to Darwin, there will be a mutation that changed the peak. In order, just rather than using the pointy peak, now it can actually be like something that it can take the cornflakes. You get the idea now? It's just the differentiation between them. So the first thing is the variation. A need in the environment need a variation in order to eat different type of seeds. Once the variation appeared, then natural selection and the survival of the fitter kicks on. Whoever has the right peak that eats the seeds on that island will be more predominant than the ones which have, like example, this one compared to this one. This is for small tree and this is a woodpecker. So they have to go inside to eat the tree, rather than having a seeds, to eat the seeds. So a natural selection happened and the survival of the fitter will kick on. So it will be a selection. Huh?
What caused the variation first place?
It's a variation according to him happened because of the crisis. A mutation happened, possibly, a DNA change, the environment stress allowing the genetic change to happen, could be anything drive the birds to generate different peaks. He didn't explain. He said the variation happened, a mutation.
At that point,
He didn't know mutation.
no one knew what's
They
happening.
call it
It's just
traits.
that it was just an observation.
Yes, it's a trait, they say. And this is the basic tenets of evolution by natural selection. More individuals are produced each generation that can survive. Phenotype or phenotypic variation exists among individuals, and variation is inherited. How this variation occurs, how it is inherited, no one knows. Although, when he wrote this, according to the historical background, there was someone called Gregor Mendel. He published about the genetics of plants, which we're going to go, and it was with Darwin, and he didn't go and read it. When reproduction isolation occurs, new species will form. I've been told I have 5 minutes. Hopefully I will finish. And then once variation and natural selection happen, what happened? It become inheritance of useful variation. That's why here is different from here, from there, from there, from there. So this is now becoming populations at different islands with different shapes of peaks. Can you tell me what is this, guys? You have good eyes? It's just a twig of an... No, this is actually a caterpillar. This is a caterpillar. It's a kind of a mechanism that, to survive, they mimic the surrounding. So a mutation happened according to New Darwinism. It says that this is a new variation happening, as this is a new way to defend. During the Industrial Revolution, the black moss become more dominant than the white moss, which is the original. And this is because the trees have a lot of sootness around it because of the burning of the fossil fuels at that time was too much, and therefore become for them a better survival mechanism rather than having a white, and then the birds will attack them because white they can see it very quickly at the background of a black one. Once the useful variation happen, new species occur. Although this is adaptation, this is microevolution, but he concluded at the end, a new species. This is a new species. No, this is the same bird, but have a different adaptation to the environment. And this is my final thing, is in Darwinism, is we know that this is the 3 monkey, now the 4th monkey. We become so reliant on our mobile to tell us from WhatsApp, okay, if Darwin is right or wrong, without even searching. We become the 4th generation of these monkeys. And that's why I want you and urge you to read and research by yourself to see if it's wrong or not. This is a paper recently done, and they suggested that there was no mutation. They did pick finches from different Galapagos Islands, until today they are there. They took them and they looked whether there was a mutation led to this variation, but they found that it is not the mutation, it's actually calling epigenetics. When the new Lamarckism heard this, is, oh yes, Lamarck is back. It's not a genetic code, it's actually epigenetic rather than genetic coding. What's the comparison? For Lamarck, it's stretching the legs, stretching the necks of the A giraffe made them longer and taller in terms of the legs, in terms of that. But in terms of Darwin, there were two giraffe. One have the mutation that elongate their necks, elongate their legs. They survive, so they reproduced and reproduced more and more. And therefore, this small one that did not have a long neck was excluded by the survival of the fittest. Microevolution, which I wanted to say, microevolution is a change on a small scale. Changing, like for example, is the sparrow, there is the Spanish, there is Italian, and there is this Italian from the north, also the northern side of Italy. They are different in terms of their peaks, in terms of their appearance, but did not change the species. It is a sprout. Macroevolution, in the contrast, is an actual evolutionary change on a large scale that happened from prokaryotic, bacterial, all the way to human. And then we become more, unfortunately, now we change from here to here. God knows what will happen next. God help us. Macroevolution, according to recent research, the Neanderthals, through the inbreeding race, 2% of human genome. 2%. And we are, from this 2%, okay, human came from Neanderthals. Okay? Viruses, 8% of the DNA. Of our DNA are virus DNA. And we still, COVID added more. And the new strains of COVID added more to our genetic makeup, which we will discover later on as generation pass on this kind of genes. Complexity, human, the chimp is 98.8%. But I can assure you, you cannot say in the genetic, you cannot say, bring the human and bring the chimp. You will find the genetics is exactly the same in terms of order. But in terms of randomness, this part is equivalent to this. For example, chromosome 1 in human has this certain gene A. This certain gene A, very similar to it, is found in chromosome 4 in monkeys. So it doesn't mirror the same arrangement. They are all over. They are similar. And I always say, what's wrong with that? You have a Mercedes and you have an Audi. They're both of them cars. Both of them, they're using the same, similar engines. They have very similar shapes. It doesn't mean say that the Mercedes is an Audi and the Audi is a Mercedes. No. Or the Mercedes came from the Audi, or the Audi took it from Mercedes. No. They're using the same material and the same thing God may have used it. Mutation theory, change in the DNA. The first person is De Vries, said that. And then Mendel discovered the genetics. Mendel discovered the genetics at the time when Darwin have postulated or started to postulate his theory. He already published. No one took anything about him or talk about him until 1902, when a group of scientists used fruit flies in order for to learn the genetics, and then they took Mendelian and become one of the most important concept of genetics. And he was what? He was a monk, a Gregor. So as Fadi was telling me yesterday, most of what we learn in our Western society, okay, comes from Christian background. And that's why a lot of scientists try to eliminate Christ from the equation. Then comes population genetics, as they saw people in North America maybe differ from South America. They're different. They did a lot of genetic and population genetic in order to understand the genes pools from one generation to generation, from one continent to another. And then the last one is the New Darwinism. The New Darwinism, they took Darwin, they took the mutation, which came from the genetic variation that Darwin have postulated, the natural selection, the Mendelian inheritance, and put them all into one. And I will leave with this. This is what I think is saying that, man, it took 2,000 years to make, let's go back to the original. And that's what a lot of papers are coming out. Neo-Darwinism must mutate to survive. There should be a third way of evolution. This person, James Shapiro, is a well-known geneticist and evolutionist. And he's saying Neo-Darwinism is not the solution. There is a lot of faults, and I can send you papers after papers suggesting a lot of pitfalls in Darwinism. Neo-Darwinism must mutate to survive. We need to rethink the impossible in evolution. And he calculated that it is impossible, if we follow Neo-Darwinism, to postulate the idea of macroevolution. Microevolution, yes, but macroevolution never can be postulated from Neo-Darwinism. And I'll finish now, but I will tell you something. I've read a paper also trying to defend mutation and evolution. And the guy said this: according to the calculation done in 2017 by someone, a paper published, there is 70 mutation happening per generation. So I'm a father, my son or my daughter. Each time I pass my genetic information to my son and to my daughter, each time there is a 70 mutation per generation. 70 mutation per generation. And he calculated there is 144 million baby per year. Do the calculation. He did the calculation. It turned out to be each year roughly 9.8 billion mutation enter to our genetic codes. How many years? Let's say 2,000 years since human came. Why we did not mutate? Why we did not evolve? If mutation was the drive for new species and new macroevolution. It's a question I will ask everyone to think about, because this is simple maths without any kind of confusion. 9.8 billion mutation occur across the entire population per year. How come we did not mutate to something different? Glory be to God forever. Sorry if I've skipped a lot of things I should have said, but it's fine. It will be more clear with Fadi and Dr. Farid and Dr. Farid later. Any question? Mark.
Yeah, asking about the mutations. Now I understand that we have like 9.8 billion mutation every year, but are they essential? Like, what other types of mutations that could lead to evolution? And are they needed to survive or not? Perhaps at this 2,000 years time span, it's not needed. That's why we did not evolve.
On the side of mutation and evolution, man, he's not backing it. He's going to argue against it.
I'm just thinking about that.
No, I will be unbiased, and I'm telling you.
Yeah, I'll bet you will.
I will try my best. Listen, stay away from him. Don't tap him. I can see that. Don't tap him. I know what he's going to ask and give us hard questions, but that's fine. I love that. Anyhow, so the question again, because Chris is actually distracting me now.
No, I'm just thinking if when we say like we've got this 9.8 billion mutations that happen
Per
every
year.
year, and it has been 2,000 years that we did not evolve. Perhaps these mutations are not needed to evolve, or there's no push for the human species.
Yeah,
to
but
evolve.
probability-wise, It should.
No.
Because 9.8 times 200,000.
No.
Calculate.
No.
And how many generation passing? Each generation. I pass 70 to my son. My son will pass 70 to his. And so on. This accumulation, this is the entire thing about evolution. It's the accumulation of mutation. And then suddenly, there will be a mutation happen randomly to give you a proper chain from species to another. And that's what he says in the fishes, is that throughout the years, because of the survival of the fitter, a new species will come. We as humans have evolved from only socially, but we did not evolve different from our genetic codes. All human, they are 98.8%. 98.8% or 99, some people will argue, say 99.9, we are all the same. There is 0.1, but some people say there is more. There is 4.5 billion base change per person in the entire world that have something called SNPs, which is just a single nucleotide in the genome. Everyone has, they're different. During our gamete, our production of the zygote, or the in meiosis specifically in the gametes, there will be crossover, and there will be something called the chimera, which chromosomes are swapped. So these changes happen. One of the things of New Darwinian, they say because of these changes, animals appear different. And this is, one of them become more favorable. One of them make it human. I've read the Gaboon monkeys. I don't know if I have the pictures, but the Gaboon monkeys, when they did the genomic, they're 98% of their genome is very equal to any monkey else. But they have something different. It's called, shattered chromosomes. Their chromosomes are like someone got the chromosomes and have a hammer and hammer it. And when they hammer it, they rejoined and formed this species. This is the conclusion they have. Because yes, it's 98, but all over the place. The coding is completely different, but still making a monkey. How? This is the puzzle. Until in 2014, as far as I remember, chromoplexy and chromotrypsis appeared in cancer cells. But this kind of catastrophic chromosomal hammered and shattered, they stitched together in different form of chromosomes, causing to cancer and then death. Then a kind of evolving to a new creature. So this is something that a lot of evolutionists are questioning. How? It's shattered, but they have certain characteristics. This Gaboon have a long hands, but they have 98% of the genome. So to your question, there is no answer for this. According to Shapiro and many evolutionists, the rate of mutation is not enough just to tie with Chris. It's not enough. Although I'm saying to you, there's 9.8 mutation happening every year. They say all of them are deleterious, which in the other word, not harmful or not beneficial. But something must have a code. So 20,000 years, 9.8 billion every year generated, or we can say lesser if we go back, because there is not enough people populating the earth at that time. But still, there must be at least one mutation that evolved a man to a different man. We haven't seen that, and I think
we've just laid the back time, so can we move
Yes.
That's all right. If there
Thank
are
you very much.
questions. Any other questions?
Any other question?
Or any other comments or any other?
Chris, I can see that you have a burning tongue. Do you want to say?
No, I don't know. I've not studied old Darwinism and all that, so it's, you know, from my point of view. But it just because you have a lot of things doesn't mean something necessarily has to happen.
But that's the accumulation of mutation. That's the whole theory. It's a longer time. Over time, it produces species.
Yeah, but it might be something, you know, massive that happened, just weird. You don't know.
Yeah,
But this is
these are
speculation.
billions-
One
These
at
are
a time, one
billions.
at a time.
These are billions of mutations over the years.
Yeah, but you say it's no, but you said it's 70 per person. It's not 9 billion in one person.
No.
So they could all be 70. They could be exactly.
But I'm
the same.
passing it to my generations.
Yeah, I know.
That's the whole idea. You're passing it.
Yeah, but
The
you don't-
idea of
yeah.
acquired mutation
Yeah, but
across generation.
Yeah, but you don't go back just 2 generations ago. They change from a monkey to a person, do you?
How many years you need?
I don't know. I didn't invent it.
Okay, so if anyone invented it, they have to tell us. The thing is, people, evolutionists and new Darwinists, that they change their mind, saying that mutation does not lead to macroevolution. From cancer, we understand mutation most of the time lead to harm the person rather than beneficial. Maybe there is a lot of epigenetic changes, but Darwin and new Darwinists, they don't agree. They want it to be wired in the DNA. It has to be wired in the DNA in order to pass it from one generation to generation. And even with that, the rates are very low, they say, to actually change a species to another. Macroevolution, a lot of scientists now believe they should be, there is a theory from 2014 championed by James Shapiro, saying we must think, and there was a recent conference in 2022 where a lot of evolutionists agreed that a mutation we have to think of something different from just mutation and survival of the fittest. Because that's the two concepts. Random mutation lead to acquire a mutation that lead that specific person or specific species to evolve to a different species. So that's the principle. Two things in Darwinism: mutation and variation, survival of the fittest. If these two cannot lead to macroevolution, then the whole theory is gone. That's why called now they wanted to do a third way of evolution. The third way is as follows. It says the first way is the presence of divine. The second way is Darwinism. And now they're trying to think of a third way, not just the genetic, but genetics, epigenetics, chemistry, because there is a lot of cell-to-cell interaction by chemistry. This cannot be explained by evolution. And I sent you a paper. He's listed a huge amount of pitfalls of evolution via mutation in the genetic codes and for survival of the fittest or natural selection. I can send you a paper and I can show it to you in the break.
Most papers are really boring.
But that's science. If you want science, you go to research.
They need to teach scientists to write. If they teach them to write, it's really boring. So I wouldn't read a paper anyway. But
If you want me to explain it to you, we can sit and explain it to
you
you.
know, I haven't got time for that.
Can we take a coffee break? Coffee break, 10 minutes and come back.
Yeah.
What do you think?